Imagine walking into a packed gym where a cocky black belt calls out a quiet woman just for laughs. Everyone expects an easy win for him. But within seconds, the entire gym is dead silent. What did she do that left even the toughest fighters speechless? Stick around, because this story will shock you and inspire you at the same time. The air inside the gym was heavy with the familiar rhythm of punches landing on pads, sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, and the occasional sharp clap of a coach shouting encouragement. It was one of those Saturday mornings when the place was busier than usual. Beginners were trying to get their footwork right. Kids in oversized uniforms were tumbling clumsily on the mats, and the advanced students, the ones everyone admired, were sparring in the main ring at the center of the room. At the heart of it all stood Jordan, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 20s, wearing his crisp black belt around his waist like it was a crown. He wasn't just another fighter. He was the gym's unofficial star. People admired his speed, his strength, and above all, his confidence. But that confidence had a dark edge. He had a habit of showing off, sometimes at the expense of others. He liked to remind everyone exactly where they stood compared to him. This morning was no different. After finishing a sparring session in which he dominated his partner within minutes, Jordan leaned against the ropes, soaking up the admiration of the younger students who were watching. His chest rose and fell as he caught his breath, but his smirk never faded. He loved the spotlight. That's when his eyes landed on her. In the far corner of the gym, sitting quietly on a bench near the entrance, was a woman who didn't quite fit the scene. She wasn't wearing the traditional martial arts GI. She didn't have gloves strapped on, nor was she hitting the bag like the others. Instead, she was calmly lacing up her sneakers, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she had all the time in the world. Her name, though most of the gym didn't know it yet, was Maya to the casual observer. She looked like just another visitor, maybe a friend of someone training there, maybe a beginner trying to work up the courage to join a class. She wore simple athletic clothes, black leggings and a fitted gray hoodie. Her hair was tied back neatly, her expression focused yet relaxed. Nothing about her screamed fighter. Nothing about her demanded attention. But to Jordan, she stood out for one reason. She looked out of place. And in his world, being out of place meant being an easy target. "Hey!" Jordan called out loudly, his voice cutting through the noise of the gym. Heads turned immediately. When the black belt spoke, people listened. He pointed directly at Maya, his grin widening. "You over there, want to step in the ring with me? Let's give the crowd a little show." The room erupted in laughter. Some chuckled nervously, unsure if he was joking. Others laughed outright, expecting this to be yet another of Jordan's entertainments. The idea of a black belt sparring with a woman, who wasn't even dressed to train, sounded ridiculous. But Maya didn't laugh. She looked up slowly, her eyes meeting his with a steady calmness that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. She didn't look angry. She didn't look intimidated. She simply studied him for a moment, as though weighing her options. Then, with a small, almost playful smile, she replied, "Sure, why not?" The gym went still. The laughter froze in people's throats. Trainers, students, and even the receptionist at the front desk turned toward her in disbelief. She had actually said yes. Jordan's smirk deepened. To him, her acceptance was fuel for his ego. He thrived on attention, and this was the perfect stage. "All right then," he said, hopping lightly on his feet. "Let's give everyone a little entertainment. Don't worry, I'll go easy on you." That line sparked fresh laughter from the crowd, though it was less certain than before. A few people shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Maya with pity. Some whispered to one another, "She doesn't know what she's getting into. She's going to regret this. Why would she even say yes?" But what stood out wasn't what Maya said. It was what she didn't say. She didn't defend herself. She didn't explain. She didn't try to prove she belonged there. Instead, she quietly stood up, pulled off her hoodie, and set it neatly on the bench. Underneath, her toned arms and shoulders told a story of discipline and strength, though few people noticed in the heat of the moment. She walked toward the ring with a calmness that clashed sharply with the buzzing energy around her. Each step seemed to slow down the room, like the world was holding its breath. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't nervous. If anything, She looked like someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. Meanwhile, Jordan basked in the attention. He bowed dramatically to the crowd, exaggerated his stretches, and threw a few mock punches in the air. "Don't blink," he said loudly. "This won't take long." To him, this was a joke. To Maya, it was something else entirely. As she reached the edge of the ring, she slipped off her sneakers and stepped barefoot onto the mat. She adjusted her stance. Not the stiff, uncertain stance of a beginner, but the grounded, balanced posture of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. A couple of the more experienced fighters watching furrowed their brows. Something about her body language felt familiar. The coach, an older man with decades of martial arts wisdom etched into his face, noticed it too. He folded his arms, his eyes narrowing as he studied her movements. Unlike the others, he wasn't laughing. Something about Maya reminded him of fighters he had seen long ago, the ones who carried themselves with quiet certainty, never needing to boast. The atmosphere shifted. It was no longer just a casual joke or a playful challenge. There was something different about this moment, something that made even the laughter feel forced. And though nobody could put it into words yet, they were all about to witness something they would never forget. Weeks turned into months, but the story of Maya's quiet victory never faded. It had started as a simple spar in a local gym, but it ended as something much bigger, a reminder of what martial arts and life itself is truly about. People who saw the video didn't just talk about the fight. They talked about the message. Parents showed it to their children as proof that arrogance never wins. Coaches shared it with their students to emphasize humility. Even people who had never stepped foot on a training mat found themselves inspired by Maya's calm strength and unwavering respect. For Jordan, the change was profound. He was no longer the arrogant champion who mocked others for fun. Instead, he became a teacher who carried humility at the heart of his lessons. His students noticed a difference. He corrected with patience, encouraged with sincerity, and no longer sought validation through showing off. One evening, after training, Jordan found himself alone in the gym. He tied his belt slowly, staring at the reflection in the mirror. He realized he wasn't ashamed of the viral clip anymore. In fact, he was grateful. Because of that moment, he had become the man and the martial artist he should have been all along. And Maya? She remained as humble as ever. She didn't chase fame or recognition, though it followed her anyway. She continued training quietly, teaching when asked, and reminding everyone she met that true strength isn't about domination. It's about balance, respect, and discipline. The two cross paths often. Sometimes they trained together. Sometimes they simply exchanged words of respect. But each time, Jordan was reminded that one fight, just one, had reshaped everything. The gym, once known for its loud competitions and inflated egos, had transformed into a place where humility was honored above pride. Students who once joked about mocking weaker fighters now reminded one another of Maya's words. Every opponent deserves respect. And that message lived on. Because sometimes it only takes a single moment, a single act, to ripple outward and change lives forever. And that's how a black belt who thought it was all just a joke ended up being humbled by a woman who carried more strength in her spirit than in her fists. Maya didn't just silence the gym. She inspired thousands of people across the world to rethink what real strength is. What do you think? Did Jordan deserve what happened to him? And if you were in that gym, what would you have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life lessons wrapped in powerful moments like this, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, stay humble, stay strong, and always remember, respect is the greatest power you can carry. By the next morning, the gym story wasn't just confined to the four walls where it happened. Clips of the spar had already hit social media. Someone had posted it with the caption, "Black belt mocks woman, but watch what she does next." Within hours, it was everywhere. On TikTok, millions watched in disbelief as Maya flipped the narrative with just a few calculated moves. On YouTube, reaction channels replayed the moment in slow motion, pointing out her flawless technique and calm composure. On Twitter, Hashtags like hashtag respect Maya and hashtag humility in martial arts began trending. The comments sections told the story of just how deeply the moment resonated. Proof you should never underestimate someone. Skill, ego. She didn't just win the fight. She taught a life lesson. People weren't just talking about punches and counters. They were talking about the message. Meanwhile, Maya went about her life as though nothing had changed. She still woke up early, still trained quietly, still carried herself with the same humility that had defined her long before the video. If she saw the buzz online, she didn't mention it. Fame had never been her goal, and it certainly wasn't going to become her focus now. Jordan, on the other hand, couldn't avoid it. Everywhere he looked, his phone, his gym's group chat, even casual conversations. People were bringing it up. At first, the embarrassment was unbearable. Seeing himself bent over, humiliated, while the internet cheered for Maya made him want to disappear. But as the days passed, the sting began to fade, replaced by something else. Reflection. He started rewatching the video, not with shame, but with a student's eyes. He noticed how Maya's footwork stayed balanced, how she didn't flinch under pressure, how she moved with precision instead of relying on brute force. She had exposed his weakness, not just in fighting, but in attitude. And slowly, Jordan began to respect her. At his gym, things were changing too. Students who once admired his swagger now asked questions about humility, about discipline. Some even wanted to learn Maya's style. The energy in the gym shifted from competition and pride to something more grounded, something closer to what martial arts was truly meant to represent. One evening, Jordan gathered his students. He stood in the middle of the mat, his belt tied firmly, his voice clear. "I need to say this," he began, the room falling silent. "What happened the other night wasn't just a fight. It was a lesson. Maya didn't just beat me. She reminded me and all of us that respect is at the heart of what we do. Without it, we're just fighting. With it, we're growing." His students nodded, some smiling, others visibly relieved. They hadn't been sure how Jordan would handle the fallout, but seeing him embrace the lesson gave them hope. Meanwhile, Maya's story had started inspiring people far beyond their city. In different corners of the world, women who had been underestimated found courage in her example. Martial arts schools shared her clip during lessons, teaching students not just about techniques, but about the importance of character. It wasn't about Maya being a woman or Jordan being a man. It wasn't about belts or ranks. It was about the universal truth. Never judge someone by appearances, and never let arrogance blind you to another person's potential. Weeks later, Maya walked back into the same gym, not knowing what to expect. The moment she stepped through the doors, the chatter stopped. Dozens of eyes turned toward her, but this time there was no laughter, no mocking smiles. Instead, there was warmth, respect. Jordan himself walked up to her. His expression was humble, his tone genuine. "Maya, I owe you. You didn't just humble me. You changed this gym. You reminded me what I lost." Maya gave a small smile. "It was never about me defeating you. It was about remembering why we fight in the first place." Jordan nodded. "Would you consider teaching a seminar here? Sharing your knowledge with the students?" For the first time, Maya looked surprised. She hadn't come here to be a teacher or a role model, but the sincerity in his eyes told her it wasn't flattery. It was respect. After a pause, she agreed, only if it helps others grow. The students cheered, and Jordan smiled, the weight of pride finally off his shoulders. The ripple effect of that single sparring match continued to spread. Through gyms, through schools, through countless people online. Maya hadn't just silenced one gym. She had awakened a movement of respect, humility, and a reminder that martial arts is about discipline of the spirit as much as the body. And Jordan? He learned to carry that lesson every day. No longer the arrogant champion, but a better leader, one molded not by victory, but by humility. For a few long seconds, the gym felt frozen in time. Jordan, the black belt champion, the man who had strutted into the match with a smirk, stood doubled over, his pride in tatters. Maya, the quiet woman who walked in with no expectations on her shoulders, stood tall and unshaken, her gaze steady, her breathing calm. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence was so thick, you could almost feel it pressing against your skin. The crowd, which had laughed at her when this all began, now stared wide-eyed, their expressions a mix of disbelief, respect, and awe. The only sound was a faint hum of the lights overhead and Jordan's uneven breathing. And then, slowly, the energy began to shift. One pair of hands started clapping from the back corner. Then another. Within seconds, the gym erupted into thunderous applause. Cheers, whistles, shouts of Maya filled the room. The sound bounced off the walls, growing louder with every second, until the entire building seemed to shake with it. Jordan straightened, his face red, his body aching. He tried to force a grin, tried to shrug it off like it was all just a friendly spar gone sideways. But the truth was written all over him. His pride had taken a heavier hit than his body. He wasn't the hero of this story anymore. Maya had taken that role, without even asking for it. Phones zooming on her, capturing every second. This was the clip that people would share online, the one that would go viral. The black belt humbled by the quiet, underestimated woman. Already, whispers ran to the crowd about posting it, about how no one outside this gym would believe it unless they saw it themselves. Maya, however, didn't bask in the attention. She didn't raise her arms in victory, didn't taunt, didn't gloat. She simply bowed her head slightly, acknowledging the fight as if it had been nothing more than training. Her humility stood in stark contrast to Jordan's earlier arrogance, and it only made the crowd respect her more. Jordan's eyes darted around the room. He could feel the stares of his students, the ones who had once idolized him, now watching Maya with admiration. It stung worse than any punch she had landed. Swallowing hard, he turned to her. His voice was low, shaky. You're incredible," he admitted, the words dragging out of him like stones from the bottom of a river. Maya simply nodded. "It's not about being incredible," she replied softly, her tone carrying through the silence of the gym. "It's about respect. Every opponent deserves it." The crowd quieted again, her words sinking in. Some of the students glanced at one another, realizing the deeper meaning. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about humility, discipline, and never underestimating someone because of how they look. Jordan lowered his head. For the first time, he looked smaller, not because of his size, but because of the weight of humility pressing down on him. He bowed to her, a gesture of respect that made the crowd gasp. Maya returned the bow, her expression serene. The applause grew louder again, but this time it wasn't just noise. It was recognition, gratitude, a celebration of what they had just witnessed. Somewhere in the back, a voice shouted, "She should be teaching us." And the gym laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine agreement. Jordan gave a faint smile at that, though it was bittersweet. In that moment, he knew the truth. Maya had done in one spar what he hadn't managed in years. She had reminded everyone what martial arts was really about. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, people approached Maya, shaking her hand, thanking her, asking her questions. Some wanted photos. Others wanted to know where she trained. Jordan watched quietly, his pride still stinging, but deep down, he knew this wasn't a loss. It was a lesson, and lessons, even painful ones, were worth learning. Maya eventually slipped out of the spotlight, her calm demeanor unchanged. She hadn't come here to steal attention. She had come here to accept the challenge and leave with her dignity intact. Everything else, the respect, the admiration, the viral fame that would surely follow, was just a side effect of who she already was, disciplined, skilled, and humble. As the gym's doors closed behind her, the whispers began. People were already talking about what had happened, replaying her counters in their minds, exaggerating the precision of her strikes, the grace of her movements. The story was already becoming legend, even before the video hit the internet. Inside, Jordan sat quietly on the bench, untying his belt with shaky hands. For the first time in years, he felt like a student again, humbled in the place he thought he ruled. But strangely, he didn't feel bitter anymore. Instead, he felt grateful. Maya had silenced the gym, but more importantly, she had silenced the arrogance in him, and that silence would stay with him far longer than the sound of applause. Jordan's chest rose and fell like a piston. his breath sharp and ragged. Sweat dripped down his temple, stinging his eyes, blurring his vision. His black belt tied firmly around his waist felt heavier than ever, like a weight dragging him down instead of lifting him up. He had gone from predator to prey in the span of minutes, and the audience knew it. Worse, he knew it. Maya, on the other hand, stood tall and composed, not a hair out of place, not a trace of panic in her posture. Her eyes never wavered, calm and focused, almost compassionate, like she wasn't trying to destroy him, but was merely showing him the mirror of his own arrogance. Jordan's pride screamed at him. One good hit. Just land one solid hit, and you can turn this around. But deep down, a quieter voice whispered something he had never admitted before. You're outmatched. The crowd, sensing the shift in energy, fell into silence again. They were holding their breath, waiting. Everyone knew something was about to happen. Something big. Jordan threw a desperate jab. It was sloppy, slower than before, but it was all he had left. Maya didn't just slip it this time. She caught his wrist mid-strike. Her grip was firm but controlled, and with a swift twist, she redirected his momentum. Jordan stumbled forward, his balance broken, his confidence shattered. Before he could recover, she stepped in and swept his leg with a perfectly timed kick. The black belt hit the mat hard, the thud echoing through the gym like a thunderclap. The crowd erupted. Some gasped, some cheered, some clapped their hands over their mouths in shock. Phones shook in people's hands as they tried to capture the moment without dropping them. Jordan scrambled to his feet, red-faced, his pride burning hotter than the pain in his body. Again! He barked, his voice cracking. Come on. Maya tilted her head, studying him. She didn't taunt, didn't gloat. She simply reset her stance, calm as ever, like a teacher waiting for a stubborn student to accept a lesson. Jordan charged, but Maya was done playing defense. This time, she moved first. In a blur, she closed the distance between them before he could even set his feet. A sharp combination followed. Jab, cross, hook, each one landing with precision. Not full power, but enough to rock him, enough to let him know she could end it if she wanted. Jordan staggered back, his arms flailing as he tried to protect himself. But Maya wasn't finished. She pivoted, spinning gracefully, and her leg whipped around in a clean roundhouse kick that stopped just inches from his temple. The crowd screamed. Jordan froze, eyes wide. He knew, everyone knew, that if she had put just a little more force into that kick, he would be out cold on the mat. But she didn't. She pulled back, lowering her leg with the same calm control she had shown since the beginning. She hadn't come here to humiliate him. She had come here to teach him. The gym was electric. Some people shouted Maya's name. Others just stood in stunned silence, their jaws hanging open. The same people who had laughed when Jordan called her out were now recording a legend in the making. Jordan's arms dropped slightly. His chest heaved. His eyes darted around, catching the stares of his students, his peers, the strangers filming him. For the first time, he wasn't the symbol of strength in this gym. Maya was. He stepped forward again, but his movements were sluggish now. His strikes telegraphed, easy to read. Maya dodged him with almost casual ease, like she was sparring in slow motion. Every miss made the audience's disbelief grow louder. And then she made her statement. As he swung wildly with one last desperate hook, Maya slipped inside, caught his arm, and in one fluid motion flipped him onto his back with judo throw so clean it could have been taken from a textbook. The black belt slammed against the mat again, the sound vibrating through the floor, through the crowd, through his pride. For a moment, the world froze. The mighty Jordan, the undefeated black belt, the gym's champion, the man who had mocked her, was lying flat on his back, gasping for breath, staring up at the ceiling. And standing over him, steady, calm, unshaken, was Maya. The crowd erupted like never before. Cheers, applause, shouts of disbelief. Some jumped up and down. Some hugged their friends. Others just stared with wide eyes, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Jordan rolled onto his side, clutching his chest, trying to regain what little dignity he had left. But dignity wasn't his to claim anymore. The gym had chosen its hero, and it wasn't him. Maya took a slow step back, offering him space to rise. She didn't taunt. She didn't humiliate. She simply gave him the dignity of standing again, though everyone in the room knew she didn't have to. Jordan pushed himself up, shaky, humbled, broken in a way he had never been before. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, he saw not just a sparring partner, but a warrior, someone who had walked into his world and rewritten the rules without saying a single boastful word. The silence returned, thicker than ever, and then, as if on cue, the entire gym broke into thunderous applause. Maya had silenced them before. Now, she had earned their respect forever. The gym had transformed. Minutes ago, the air had been thick with laughter, mockery, and the cocky confidence of a black belt who thought he'd be entertaining his friends with a quick, easy spar. Now, you could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Every shuffle of foot, every breath between punches, sounded like thunder in the silence. Phones hovered in the air, recording every second. Some people whispered to one another, barely daring to raise their voices. Nobody wanted to miss what was happening in front of them. Jordan, however, wasn't enjoying the shift. His smirk was gone, replaced by a stormy scowl. The sting of Maya's counters burned more on his pride than on his skin. For years, he had been the man people looked up to in this gym, the unstoppable force, the gold standard. Now, in front of his students, his peers, and strangers alike, a woman he thought was just an outsider was making him look ordinary. No, worse than ordinary. Vulnerable. He clenched his fists tighter. This isn't happening, he told himself. I'm the black belt. I've trained for years. I've broken boards, won medals. She shouldn't even be standing in front of me. But she was. And she wasn't just standing. She was owning the space. Maya hadn't once cracked a smile. She hadn't shown arrogance or mockery. Her expression was calm, almost serene, like she was sparring with herself in the mirror. Every movement she made carried intention. When she slipped a punch, her balance never broke. When she threw a counter, it landed with precision, never wasted, never too much. Jordan tried to shake the doubt away. He raised his guard higher, adjusting his stance. He needed to take control, to remind everyone who the real fighter was. He stepped in fast, feinting with his left and then firing a sharp right hook. The punch cut through the air, powerful enough to make some in the audience flinch. But Maya wasn't there. She dipped under the hook, her body flowing beneath it, as if she had read the move before he'd even thrown it. In the same motion, she pivoted to the side and tapped him lightly in the ribs with a short strike. It wasn't full power, but it was enough to make him stumble sideways. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. A ripple of disbelief moved through the onlookers. She's reading him, someone whispered. She's better than him, another said, unable to hold it back. Jordan's jaw tightened. Sweat had started to bead on his forehead. Not from exhaustion, but from the creeping realization that this fight was no longer in his control. "Come on, Jordan," a voice called out from the back, trying to encourage him. But even that sounded hollow, uncertain. Jordan growled under his breath and lunged again, this time a low sweep aimed at her legs. If he could take her balance, he could end this quickly. But once again, Maya was ready. She hopped lightly over the sweep, landing back in stance with a grace that made the move look effortless. Then, without hesitation, she unleashed a low kick of her own, snapping against his shin. The sound of bone meeting bone echoed through the gym, sharp and biting. Jordan winced, stumbling back again. The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in cheers. Cheers for her. That was the breaking point. Jordan's face flushed crimson. His ego screamed louder than the crowd around him. This wasn't just about a spar anymore. To him, it was about respect, pride, and authority he felt slipping away. He roared and charged, unleashing everything he had. Punches, kicks, feints, spins. His entire arsenal came flooding out in a desperate attempt to overwhelm her. His movements were powerful, fast, the kind that had floored countless opponents before. But Maya was untouchable. Her feet glided across the mat like she was skating on air. She pivoted, slipped, blocked, redirected. Each move executed with surgical precision. And every time Jordan overextended, she answered with a counter. A jab to the chest, a kick to the thigh, A palm strike that forced him back. The gym was on its feet now. Shouts rang out. People unable to contain their astonishment. The ones who had laughed at her before were now chanting her name without even realizing it. Maya! 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 Jordan's chest heaved as he gasped for breath. His punches had slowed. His feet felt heavier. He could feel fatigue creeping in, something he hadn't expected in what was supposed to be a joke of a spar. Meanwhile, Maya looked almost untouched. Her breathing was steady, her movements still sharp and clean. She wasn't tired. She wasn't desperate. She wasn't even rattled. For the first time in his fighting career, Jordan realized he was the one being studied. She was the one teaching the lesson, whether she intended to or not. And everyone in the room could see it. Phones zoomed closer. Some people exchanged wide-eyed looks, knowing this video would explode online. A black belt humiliated in his own gym by someone the crowd had underestimated. It was the kind of story no one would believe unless they saw it themselves. Jordan's pride screamed for him to keep going, but his body betrayed him. His strike slowed, his stance loosened, his eyes darted nervously. He wasn't the hunter anymore. He was the hunted. And Maya? She was just getting started. The coach's hand dropped, and the match was officially on. Jordan wasted no time. He had promised the crowd a quick show, and he intended to deliver. With a confident grin plastered across his face, he lunged forward, his fist cutting through the air with practiced speed. He didn't come at her with full force. After all, he was taking it easy, but the strike carried enough power to stun anyone inexperienced. But Maya wasn't stunned. She shifted, not in panic, not in retreat, but in precision, one subtle sidestep. So smooth it looked like she had been anticipating his move before he even threw it. Jordan's fist missed his target completely, brushing against empty air. And before he could even reset, Maya's hand darted forward with surgical accuracy. A short, sharp jab landed square on his shoulder. The pop of contact echoed louder than it should have, amplified by the stillness of the room. The crowd gasped in unison. Jordan's grin faltered for just a moment, replaced by a flash of confusion. He hadn't expected her to dodge, much less to counter. It had to be a fluke, he told himself. A lucky guess. Beginners sometimes got one or two surprising hits in before reality caught up. He shook his head, smirked again, and raised his hand higher. Not bad, he said, his voice dripping with bravado, though it didn't carry the same weight it had a minute ago. But let's see how you handle this. This time, he came harder, faster, a flurry of quick strikes, a jab, a cross, followed by a sharp low kick aimed at her thigh. The kind of combination that overwhelmed most sparring partners. But Maya wasn't most. Her body flowed like water, weaving just outside the path of each strike. Her head slipped to the side of his jab, her torso leaned away from the cross, and her leg lifted just enough to absorb the impact of his kick without losing balance. Each movement was efficient, measured, practiced. The gym, which had erupted in laughter minutes before, was silent now. The only sound was the scuff of feet on the mat, the sharp exhale of breath with each strike, and the occasional smack of Jordan's glove hitting nothing but air. Jordan frowned. He hadn't landed a single hit. Determined to reassert control, he pressed forward again, this time with more aggression. His arms blurred as he threw combinations, his footwork fast and heavy. He wanted to corner her, trap her, force her into panic. But panic never came. Maya's eyes never left him. She read his movements with unnerving calm. Her reactions timed down to the fraction of a second. When he jabbed, she slipped. When he crossed, she parried lightly. When he tried to close distance, she pivoted, sliding out of his range with ease. And then, just as the crowd was starting to wonder if she'd ever throw back, she struck again. A crisp counterpunch snapped forward, catching him clean on the chest. Not enough to injure, but enough to knock him off rhythm. He stumbled a step backward, his eyes widening in disbelief. A murmur ran through the crowd. Did you see that? She's not just defending. She's controlling this. She's way better than she looks. Jordan's chest tightened. Not from the hit, but from the humiliation creeping in. He could feel the shift in the room. The spectators weren't laughing anymore. They weren't cheering for his dominance. They were watching her. That wasn't supposed to happen. All right, he muttered under his breath, gritting his teeth. He came in again, this time with less showmanship and more focus. He feinted high, tried to draw her into a mistake, then aimed a sweeping kick low. It was a trick he had used to drop countless opponents before. But Maya didn't bite. She read the feint, checked the kick with perfect timing, and answered with a snapping front kick of her own. It struck his midsection with a thud that sent him stumbling back farther than he wanted to admit. The crowd erupted, not with laughter, but with gasps and shouts of surprise. Some even clapped instinctively, unable to hold back their awe. Jordan's face flushed red. His smirk was gone now, replaced by clenched teeth and narrowed eyes. He wasn't playing anymore. Maya, on the other hand, hadn't changed at all. She lowered her leg, reset her stance, and stared at him with the same calm, steady gaze as before. Her breathing was even, controlled. To her, this wasn't a fight for dominance. It was simply practice, a test, a dance she had already mastered. The silence in the gym grew heavier. The people holding up phones were no longer chuckling behind the screens. They were wide-eyed, whispering to themselves as they recorded. They knew they were capturing something extraordinary, something no one had expected when Jordan cracked that first joke. Jordan charged again, throwing another wild combination. His fists cut through the air, but Maya slipped them all, her head moving just inches out of reach. Each miss made him more frustrated, more reckless. And with every miss, Maya's confidence seemed only to grow. Then it happened again, another counter. This time, a quick hook that tapped his jaw just enough to make his head snap sideways. It wasn't a knockout punch, but it was precise, undeniable. The crowd gasped louder. Jordan stumbled back, his ego shattering piece by piece. And in that moment, everyone in the gym knew the fight wasn't going the way they thought it would. The black belt wasn't in control. Maya was. The mat was cool beneath Maya's bare feet as she stepped fully into the ring. Every movement she made was deliberate, controlled, and almost unervingly calm. She didn't glance at the crowd. She didn't fidget. She simply walked to her spot and stood tall, her chin lifted, her eyes fixed directly on Jordan. The gym, once buzzing with noise, had quieted to a low hum of whispers and rustling. It wasn't silence, but it was close. People leaned forward in their seats, their arms folded, their phones recording. No one wanted to miss a second of what was about to happen. Jordan, for his part, thrived in this environment. The spotlight was his oxygen. He bounced lightly on his toes, rolling his shoulders and flashing his signature grin. Every exaggerated motion was designed to remind the audience who the star was. "Don't worry," he said again, his voice loud and dripping with mock reassurance. "I'll take it easy on you. I don't want to break anything." Laughter trickled through the crowd, though not as strong as before. People wanted to laugh, but something about the way Maya stood, still unshaken, made it harder. Jordan turned in a slow circle, gesturing to the spectators. "You all ready for this?" he called out, and a smattering of claps and cheers answered him. He pointed dramatically at Maya. "Let's give her some encouragement. She's gonna need it." The words landed flat. A few chuckles, a few awkward claps. But the energy wasn't the same. The more experienced fighters watching were starting to sense what the coach already knew. This wasn't going to be the one-sided show Jordan thought it was. Maya adjusted her stance, sliding one foot slightly back, knees soft, shoulders loose. Her hands rose, not high and stiff like someone copying what they'd seen in a movie, but low, measured, balanced. She looked like she was conserving energy, prepared for something more than just defense. Jordan noticed the stance but dismissed it. To him, a black belt experience was worth more than whatever casual posture she was showing off. He had years of drills, tournaments, and sparring under his belt. She, in his mind, was just a brave beginner who didn't know what she had walked into. "Try not to get scared when I come at you," he teased, smirking. Maya's eyes didn't flicker. She didn't even blink. The coach stepped forward, raising his hand between them. His eyes lingered on Maya for a fraction of a second longer than they did on Jordan. He could see it clearly now. The way she shifted her weight, the way her muscles stayed relaxed instead of tense, the way her breathing remained steady. He had trained fighters long enough to know this woman wasn't here to play. The coach's voice cut through the tension. "All right," he said. "Keep it clean. Respect each other. Begin when I drop my hand." The whispers died instantly. The gym seemed to inhale all at once. Maya rolled her shoulders once, exhaled slowly, and lowered her chin. Her eyes locked onto Jordan's center of mass, focused, calculating. Jordan bounced harder, shadowboxing for show, his smirk widening. He wanted to make her nervous before they even touched gloves. But the only nervousness in the room was his own, buried deep beneath layers of arrogance he couldn't afford to shed. He pointed at her once more, for the crowd's amusement. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he quipped. Still no reaction. And that silence, her refusal to banter, to bite, to break, was louder than anything he could say. Phones hovered higher. People leaned forward on the edges of their seats. The younger students, eyes wide, whispered questions to their parents or older siblings. The advanced fighters crossed their arms and muttered under their breath, "She doesn't look nervous." "Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. He's a black belt. Still, she looks like she knows something we don't." The coach dropped his hand. The spar had begun. Jordan lunged forward, not with full force, but with enough speed to show dominance, to intimidate, to end this quickly. His fist cut through the air with a whoosh, aimed directly for Maya's shoulder. A simple opening strike to test her. But in the half second it took him to move, Maya shifted. Not a stumble, not a retreat. A shift, a clean, efficient sidestep that left his punch hitting nothing but air. And in the same motion, almost too fast for the untrained eye, her hand shot forward in a sharp, precise jab. The sound of her knuckles connecting with his shoulder echoed across the gym. The crowd gasped. The laughter that filled the air moments ago vanished in an instant. Phones caught the moment. The black belt's punch missing completely, the newcomer landing the first hit. Jordan froze for half a second, stunned not by pain but by disbelief. And Maya? She simply reset her stance, breathing evenly, eyes locked on him once more. The entire gym realized at once. This was no joke. The mat was cool beneath Maya's bare feet as she stepped fully into the ring. Every movement she made was deliberate, controlled, and almost unervingly calm. She didn't glance at the crowd. She didn't fidget. She simply walked to her spot and stood tall, her chin lifted, her eyes fixed directly on Jordan. The gym, once buzzing with noise, had quieted to a low hum of whispers and rustling. It wasn't silence, but it was close. People leaned forward in their seats, their arms folded, their phones recording. No one wanted to miss a second of what was about to happen. Jordan, for his part, thrived in this environment. The spotlight was his oxygen. He bounced lightly on his toes, rolling his shoulders and flashing his signature grin. Every exaggerated motion was designed to remind the audience who the star was. "Don't worry," he said again, his voice loud and dripping with mock reassurance. "I'll take it easy on you. I don't want to break anything." Laughter trickled through the crowd, though not as strong as before. People wanted to laugh, but something about the way Maya stood, still unshaken, made it harder. Jordan turned in a slow circle, gesturing to the spectators. "You all ready for this?" he called out, and a smattering of claps and cheers answered him. He pointed dramatically at Maya. "Let's give her some encouragement. She's gonna need it." The words landed flat. A few chuckles, a few awkward claps. But the energy wasn't the same. The more experienced fighters watching were starting to sense what the coach already knew. This wasn't going to be the one-sided show Jordan thought it was. Maya adjusted her stance, sliding one foot slightly back, knees soft, shoulders loose. Her hands rose, not high and stiff like someone copying what they'd seen in a movie, but low, measured, balanced. She looked like she was conserving energy, prepared for something more than just defense. Jordan noticed the stance but dismissed it. To him, a black belt experience was worth more than whatever casual posture she was showing off. He had years of drills, tournaments, and sparring under his belt. She, in his mind, was just a brave beginner who didn't know what she had walked into. "Try not to get scared when I come at you," he teased, smirking. Maya's eyes didn't flicker. She didn't even blink. The coach stepped forward, raising his hand between them. His eyes lingered on Maya for a fraction of a second longer than they did on Jordan. He could see it clearly now. The way she shifted her weight, the way her muscles stayed relaxed instead of tense, the way her breathing remained steady. He had trained fighters long enough to know this woman wasn't here to play. The coach's voice cut through the tension. "All right," he said. "Keep it clean. Respect each other. Begin when I drop my hand." The whispers died instantly. The gym seemed to inhale all at once. Maya rolled her shoulders once, exhaled slowly, and lowered her chin. Her eyes locked onto Jordan's center of mass, focused, calculating. Jordan bounced harder, shadowboxing for show, his smirk widening. He wanted to make her nervous before they even touched gloves. But the only nervousness in the room was his own, buried deep beneath layers of arrogance he couldn't afford to shed. He pointed at her once more, for the crowd's amusement. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he quipped. Still no reaction. And that silence, her refusal to banter, to bite, to break, was louder than anything he could say. Phones hovered higher. People leaned forward on the edges of their seats. The younger students, eyes wide, whispered questions to their parents or older siblings. The advanced fighters crossed their arms and muttered under their breath, "She doesn't look nervous." "Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. He's a black belt. Still, she looks like she knows something we don't." The coach dropped his hand. The spar had begun. Jordan lunged forward, not with full force, but with enough speed to show dominance, to intimidate, to end this quickly. His fist cut through the air with a whoosh, aimed directly for Maya's shoulder. A simple opening strike to test her. But in the half second it took him to move, Maya shifted. Not a stumble, not a retreat. A shift, a clean, efficient sidestep that left his punch hitting nothing but air. And in the same motion, almost too fast for the untrained eye, her hand shot forward in a sharp, precise jab. The sound of her knuckles connecting with his shoulder echoed across the gym. The crowd gasped. The laughter that filled the air moments ago vanished in an instant. Phones caught the moment. The black belt's punch missing completely, the newcomer landing the first hit. Jordan froze for half a second, stunned not by pain but by disbelief. And Maya? She simply reset her stance, breathing evenly, eyes locked on him once more. The entire gym realized at once. This was no joke. The silence after Maya stepped onto the mat didn't last long. The gym, always alive with chatter, punching bags, and sneakers squeaking on polished floors, suddenly became a hive of whispers. "Is she crazy?" someone muttered near the benches. "She doesn't stand a chance," another voice replied, shaking their head. "She's going to regret this," a third chimed in. It wasn't just doubt. It was a mixture of disbelief, nervous laughter, and curiosity. People leaned closer, abandoning their own drills just to watch what was unfolding in the center ring. Jordan, sensing the growing attention, leaned into it like a performer stepping onto a stage. He puffed out his chest, grinning at his audience as if this were his show. "Don't worry, folks," he said loud enough for the whole room to hear. "I promise to be gentle." Laughter rippled across the crowd again, but this time it was thinner, more hesitant. Some people smiled because they wanted to fit in, others because they truly believed the spectacle would be quick and amusing. But hidden among the chuckles were uneasy faces, fighters who had trained long enough to notice small details others missed. Those fighters saw the way Maya carried herself. Her shoulders weren't tight with nerves, her hands didn't tremble, and her breathing was steady. She wasn't bouncing with nervous energy like a beginner about to face their first spar. She was rooted, patient, calm, like someone who had been here before. The coach noticed it too, standing off to the side with his arms crossed. His seasoned eyes studied Maya carefully. He didn't laugh like the others. He didn't shake his head or whisper doubts. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, the corner of his mouth twitching in what looked suspiciously like curiosity. He had seen countless fighters step onto that mat, but rarely did he see someone so unshaken. Meanwhile, Jordan played to his audience. He exaggerated his stretches, rolling his shoulders, bouncing on his heels. Every movement was designed to show his confidence, his control, his dominance. To him, this was another chance to prove why he was a gym star. He had been the black belt for years, undefeated in sparring, admired by beginners, respected, if not feared, by his peers. But underneath his theatrics, something small gnawed at him. Maya's silence, her lack of reaction. She hadn't flinched at his jokes, hadn't seemed intimidated by his belt, his size, or the crowd's murmurs. She simply existed in the ring with a focus that unsettled him in ways he couldn't admit out loud. The crowd, though, clung to what they believed. Jordan was the black belt, the champion. Maya was the outsider. And outsiders weren't supposed to win. "She's probably never thrown a punch in her life," someone whispered from the sidelines. "He's going to knock her down in seconds," another predicted. But then someone else said quietly, "Look at her stance." The remark drew a few glances. Indeed, Maya's stance wasn't sloppy. Her weight was evenly distributed, her knees slightly bent, her hands relaxed but ready. To the untrained eye, it looked casual. To anyone with real fighting experience, it looked intentional. Still, the majority dismissed it. It was easier to laugh, to assume the obvious outcome, than to question what they were seeing. Phones began to appear, lifted discreetly into the air. A couple of people started recording, eager to capture what they thought would be a quick knockout. The idea of posting online, of watching the clip go viral, was too tempting. They wanted proof of Jordan's dominance, another highlight to add to his reputation. But not everyone shared that excitement. Near the corner, a young woman whispered to her friend, "Why do I feel like this isn't going to go the way we think?" Her friend frowned, brushing it off. "Come on, he's a black belt. She doesn't stand a chance." Jordan cracked his neck and shot a playful wink at the audience. "Watch closely," he said. "This will be over before you can blink." His words brought more chuckles, but this time a strange tension underlined the laughter. It was as if the gym itself sensed that something unexpected was about to happen. The coach finally stepped forward, raising a hand to signal the start. His voice was steady, but his eyes stayed locked on Maya. He had a feeling, something he couldn't quite put into words, that this wouldn't be the simple spectacle Jordan thought it would be. As the room hushed, the atmosphere thickened. The children stopped their drills, their wide eyes glued to the ring. The advanced fighters leaned forward, their curiosity piqued. Even the receptionist abandoned her desk, phone in hand, to watch. Maya rolled her shoulders once more, adjusted her footing, and took a slow breath. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Every part of her body language said she was ready. Jordan, still smiling, stepped forward with exaggerated confidence. He raised his fist high, bouncing like a showman in front of his audience. "Don't blink," he repeated. "You might miss it." The crowd chuckled once more, though softer this time. The laughter was losing steam. Something about Maya's calm silence was draining the humor out of the room. Whispers floated through the air like electricity. "Why does she look so calm? Is it just me? Or does she actually look like she knows what she's doing? No way. She's bluffing. She has to be." The coach lifted his hand, glanced once at Maya, once at Jordan, and then dropped it. The room held its breath. The spar was about to begin. And though nobody knew it yet, the gym was standing at the edge of a moment they would remember for the rest of their lives. The gym's atmosphere hung heavy after Maya's simple reply. "Sure, why not?" No shouting, no dramatic speech. Just those three calm words that carried more weight than anyone could have imagined. Jordan's smirk twitched slightly. He was used to people hesitating, laughing nervously, or politely declining when he teased them with challenges. He wasn't used to someone saying yes, and certainly not with that kind of composure. Maya stood there, pulling her hoodie over her head with deliberate slowness, as though the entire room wasn't staring at her. Her movements were efficient, unhurried. She set the hoodie on the bench, smoothed out the sleeves, and then turned back toward the ring. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't seek approval. She simply acted as if this was the most normal thing in the world. That quiet confidence unsettled the room. From the sidelines, the whispers started. "Who is she? Does she even train here? She doesn't look like a fighter." To the untrained eye, they were right. Maya wasn't dressed like anyone else in the gym. No crisp GI, no official belt, no gloves dangling from her hands. Just a pair of black leggings, a plain workout top, and an aura that didn't quite fit the stereotype of someone stepping into the ring with a black belt. Jordan seized a moment to win back control. He leaned casually against the ropes and let out a chuckle. "You sure about this?" he asked, his tone dripping with mock concern. "I mean, I'd hate to send you home limping before you've even had a proper class." A few chuckles erupted in the crowd, though not as confidently as before. The more observant fighters were noticing the details, the way Maya moved her shoulders, the way her eyes never darted nervously, the way she breathed evenly. But the majority still saw her as an outsider. To them, Maya was the woman nobody expected to be there. She wasn't on the gym's roster. She wasn't a regular they recognized. She wasn't loud, flashy, or desperate to prove herself like so many newcomers were. If anything, she looked like she had wandered in by accident and decided to play along. Yet there was something magnetic about her presence. As she walked closer to the ring, each step seemed to quiet the room a little more, not because she demanded silence, but because people couldn't quite process what they were seeing. The contrast between her calm demeanor and Jordan's cocky bravado was striking. He was bouncing, smirking, showing off a crowd. She was steady, focused, her eyes locked on him like he was the only person in the room. The coach, standing at the side with his arms crossed, narrowed his eyes. Something about her composure tugged at his memory. He had seen hundreds of fighters over the years, some raw, some seasoned, some arrogant, some humble, but very few carried themselves with that particular kind of balance. It wasn't the balance of someone learning. It was the balance of someone who already knew. Jordan, of course, didn't notice. He thrived on attention, and right now, all eyes were on him. He raised his arms dramatically, calling out, "Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for my brave volunteer." He bowed sarcastically, milking the moment as if this were a comedy show rather than a sparring match. The room gave him the response he wanted: cheers, laughter, and clapping. But underneath it all, there was a nervous energy creeping in. People wanted to be entertained, yes, but they also couldn't shake the strange feeling that Maya wasn't playing the role of the easy opponent like Jordan thought she was. Maya stepped onto the mat and slipped off her sneakers. She flexed her toes against the surface, grounding herself. Then, without any announcement, she adjusted into a stance. Not a sloppy stance of beginner mimicking what they've seen, but measured one. Her weight evenly distributed, her center of gravity controlled, her arms raised not too high, not too low. A few of the advanced fighters in the back exchanged quick glances. They knew enough to recognize that this woman wasn't standing like a novice. Still, the majority clung to what they believed. "She's going to get hurt," someone whispered. "Jordan's too strong. She doesn't stand a chance." And Jordan, feeding off the crowd's uncertainty, leaned forward with another mocking grin. "I'll make this quick," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Wouldn't want to embarrass you in front of all these people." Maya didn't reply. She didn't flinch. She simply adjusted her footing slightly, eyes steady, posture firm. The lack of reaction was, in its own way, a response more powerful than words. For the first time, Jordan felt something stir in his chest. Not fear, not yet, but something unfamiliar, a flicker of doubt. He quickly pushed it away, bouncing on his heels, shadowboxing a little to remind himself that he was a black belt, the champion of his gym, the one who had never been humiliated. The coach cleared his throat, signaling that the spar could begin once they were ready. The crowd leaned in, hungry for what they assumed would be a spectacle. Phones came out of pockets. Someone whispered, "I gotta record this." Maya rolled her shoulders once, loosened her neck, and exhaled slowly. Jordan twirled his fist dramatically, putting on a show. Two people stood in that ring, but only one carried the weight of expectation. Everyone expected Jordan to dominate. Nobody expected Maya to last more than a few seconds. And that was exactly why the next few minutes would silence the whole gym.